Moving on from this, we have the table of floating point types. So again, it's just going over the differences between the types of floating points, just minimum values that can be represented, maximum, and then the decimal point accuracy. That leaves us with two arithmetic types, the integral and the floating point. So now that we get to constants, the best way I can explain constants to you is they are defined placeholders of values which cannot be changed. So they are defined in the beginning of the program generally, and throughout the life of that program, even if other objects try to interact with the constant, or you write code to change the constant, it will not be allowed to change. And constants can be defined by yourself, the developer, or they can be predefined by the programming language. You have the examples here of 16 being able to represent 0 to 0 in the octal numerical system, or 0x10 in the hexadecimal numerical system. That's an example. Now let's see that in action in some real code. We've got our program here, starting with two one-line comments, just explaining quickly what the program is all about. That's always generally a good idea to include in your programs. You have the IOStream preprocessor, which right off the bat, we know we're going to be dealing with input and output into the console. Now let's look into the body of the main function. And we have a comment here trying to explain what's happening briefly, but let's break it down. You start with cout, so we know we're getting information output into that console. We have value of 0xff, so this is a string, and then we're literally putting in 0xff, which, as you might recall, this is a hexadecimal value. And this is why we call it a hexadecimal integer literal. I'll explain in a second. And then we have decimal, but the output that you get is 255. So we put in the hexadecimal, which the program knows holds a value of 255 in decimal. And that's why it gets output. By default, cout is going to output into decimal. Now, let's look at the next line. And this second bit here is going to be a bit different, because if you read this properly, it says the manipulator hex changes the output to hexadecimal instead of decimal. Now, hex is a function. It's a function that interacts with the cout object to change that output from decimal to hexadecimal. So we have here the string value of 27 equals hex. As soon as we input hex in here, that changes everything. And then we just put 27. And as soon as we put that 27 next to the hex, that's going to be output as 1b. Rather than getting output as 27, is actually being output as 1b hexadecimal. And then we finish the program with the return line. And that's to signify again that it's run successfully with no issues.